Hello, my name is Stephanie Zizov. This is my presentation on the cultural and comparative approaches to Near Middle Eastern and Greek myths. To evaluate each myth, I use these charts. For the cultural approach, I will be looking for the weird, dialogue, things that are repeated, and long descriptions. Based on these observations, I will make inferences on how the myth has an effect on the cultures. To compare each myth, I will be looking at 4 common similarities between all 4 myths. How many gods are in the myth? How was the world created? Who created humans? And what is the view or role of humans? The chart will show how the myths are different but still have similarities. The Eastern myth is Genesis 1 through 3. These are the first few chapters of the Bible describing the creation of the world and human. God creates the earth in 7 days, each day creating another part. Each one of his creations is considered good. On the 7th day, God rested, which is why the Sabbath is on the 7th day of the week. God then creates man to roam freely in the Garden of Eden and gives him the job to name all the creatures on the earth. Next, he created a woman, and the two roam the garden. A serpent manipulates Eve to eat the forbidden fruit which she shares with Adam. When God discovers this, he curses humans to work the land and live off of it. The weird I noticed of the myth is God had created everything on earth, all of the creatures, plants, and the heavens. He also stated that all of his creations were good. But the serpent that manipulated Eve is evil and is the representation of Satan. So I believe this shows that there will always be some type of evil in the world, even if everything else is good. In the myth, God speaks with man and learns that they have disobeyed him. This conversation is the very first interaction between humans and God, and unfortunately, it was a negative conversation. This dialogue could be the reason there is a strong belief that humans need to work hard to gain God's forgiveness. During the 6 days of creation, God declared that everything he had created was good. This repetition is important because it shows that God is proud of his work and doesn't regret the world he created. The myth had long descriptions of how God created each part of the world. The significance of this is to show how God took pride in his work and everything created had a thought-out purpose. The second Near Middle Eastern myth is the Babylonian myth Enuma Elish. This myth relates to the Babylonians and ancient society in Mesopotamia. The myth begins with the goddess Tiamat protecting her children, the other gods, from their father who planned to kill them. Not too soon after, Tiamat also turned against her children and planned to kill the gods as well. Secret plots were conspired and monsters like the Hydra were created. Then, the gods crowned Marduk to be the savior of the gods. Marduk vanquished the goddess Tiamat, and using her body he created the world. Marduk became the leader of the gods, and for generations his name is praised in Babylonian society. The weird of this myth is that the gods were constantly fighting, first against their father, then their mother, and each other. This could represent the culture's belief on violence. Since the fighting resulted in the creation of the world, there could be a belief that violence can bring good things. Most of the dialogue in the myth was secret plots between the gods. Tiamat had the gods she trusted and made plans with, as did Marduk. This could represent that there is little trust in each other and that plays into violence. Near the end of the myth, it is said that the number 50 and Marduk's name must be repeated and spread down through generation. This shows how the Babylonians believe in generational beliefs. There is lots of description on how Marduk used Tiamat's body to create the world. This could be the Babylonians' version of Mother Earth and how beauty can come from anything, even evil. Both of the Greek myths were written by Hesiod. Hesiod's Theogony discusses the creation of the gods and the fights between them and the Titans. How Kronos ate his children to rule the world with the Titans, and how Zeus, son of Kronos, defeats his father and the Titans that roam the world. Theogony also discusses how Zeus becomes the leader of the gods and created the separation between Earth and Olympus. The end of the myth begins to go into the interaction between the gods and humans, the creation of evil, and the stories that we know today as the myths of the Greeks. It is strange that the gods have the urge to eat or destroy their children. This could create a belief that at some point a parental figure may betray their children. This also shows that violence can lead to good things. Most of the dialogue comes from commands from Zeus. This shows Hesiod's fascination with Zeus and how he is considered the most divine god. His leadership and power will continue to be praised. In addition to the last point, there is constant repetition describing how Zeus is the greatest god, reaffirming that he is a god that is worshipped heavily in the Greek culture. There were lots of detailed descriptions of how the Titans were defeated. This could be another example of how there is a belief that good can come from violence. Work and Days is the second Greek myth by Hesiod. This myth is shorter and discusses a few extra creations after the initial creation of Olympus. The myth discusses Pandora and how she released all the evils onto the world. There's a long explanation of how Zeus created new generations of humans. The last bit of the myth goes into the good conduct and rules to follow and obey Zeus. It is weird that humans don't have a purpose on Earth. They just exist on Earth. The only type of purpose they have is to obey the orders of the gods, or else they will be punished. This could be the creation of the fear of gods in Greek culture. Once again, most of the dialogue is Zeus making commands and declaring things, only further showing how Zeus is the most praised god. To go along with the last point, Zeus, son of Kronos, is repeated consistently. This shows the connection between Zeus and the Titans, but also how powerful Zeus is. That not only is he a praised god, but also a god powerful enough to take down a Titan. Finally, there is also a lot of description on the good conduct humans have to follow to be approved by Zeus. This could show the blind loyalty that Greeks had to Zeus and the other gods, that they believed that if they didn't follow the rules, they would be punished by the gods. All four of these myths have lots of similarities and differences. Here stated in the chart shows some of these, but there is more. For instance, the Babylonian myth and the Greek myths have a lot of violence between the gods, while the Israelite myth has conflict between God and his creation of humans. A similarity every myth has is the presence of evil. Evil shows up in the form of serpents, sin, and betrayal in all of these myths. These similarities could prove that every myth or belief in the world all stems from one idea or event. Then, through the years, different cultures made different explanations for these events. The reason we look into the cultural and comparative approaches in ancient myths is to learn from the myths. We gain knowledge and speculate how these ancient cultures lived during their time. Based on this, we can make connections to how these cultures were evolved to modern day. We see where beliefs from these cultures come from and what the reason for why they have these beliefs. And once again, we can speculate that all myths and legends are in some way connected or branched from the same idea. Jumping forward to the present, we can see that mythology has changed, as has our modern world. Today, we don't have stories of monsters or gods telling us what to do. Instead, we have fictional superheroes who fight against evil in cities and do the jobs ordinary people can't do. Since comic book heroes aren't like the gods in mythology, there is a different way to look at the cultural and comparative approaches. When looking at the cultural approach of comic books, we have to pick out the weird, just like the ancient myths. But we also need to understand what is the purpose of being a hero and a lesson you learn from the comic book. Since comic books usually take place in present-day societies, there is a lesson that children should learn from the heroes. Comparing modern mythology to ancient mythology can be difficult because of the time relevance, but with a Venn diagram we can see there are some similarities. A classic modern mythology is Superman. An alien boy crash lands in the city of Metropolis and is taken in by the Kent family. Clark Kent lives his life as an ordinary boy until one day he discovers he has superpowers. When he gets older, he decides to use his powers to fight crime and take the alias of Superman. First, it is strange that an alien boy is raised like a normal human boy, but even after discovering his power, Clark still keeps his identity secret. This could show that even an ordinary person can be heroic. Superman's goal as a hero is to protect his city and the ones he loves. He is an alien and comes from a planet that does have evil. He is also aware that he is much stronger than anyone else, but even with this great power, he only uses it to protect and serve. Finally, from the story of Superman, we learn to not be afraid to defy others, meaning that you shouldn't be afraid to stand up for yourself and others, but also means being true to yourself and follow your dreams. The obvious differences between Superman and, let's say, Greek mythology are: Superman is a fictional story created for children, he is an alien but lived as a mortal, and Superman is an iconic role model for children and adults. In Greek mythology, the main people are gods and goddesses who are seen as deities. These mythological beings are credited for the creation of the world. Some similarities between the two are both Superman and the gods have inhuman powers and are stronger than the average human. Both also take action against evil and are determined in creating good in the world. And finally, both teach lessons or morals. When you look at the myths, you can see the lessons the gods put onto humans. Similarly, Superman is used to teach children modern-day morals. Unfortunately, analyzing modern mythology similarly to ancient myths doesn't have the same effect. Most comic book stories teach the same lesson over and over, but in different ways. Some lessons are even taken from myths and rewritten to match modern day. Also, comic books are written for the general public and don't develop beliefs, so they aren't cultures attached to comic books. Finally, comic books don't change society. There is no physical impact. It's mostly a group of people who enjoy watching or reading these fictional stories. This also applies to modern movies, books, and music. Modern mythology is a way to represent modern issues. In the future, who knows, maybe researchers will study our behaviors and obsessions to these types of media and develop their own views. But for now, there isn't much we can learn from our own mythology. In conclusion, there is a lot we can gather from looking at the cultural and comparative approach from mythology. We can infer the true creation of the world and humans, and can argue how every culture is related in some way. Even though we can't analyze modern mythology the same way, we can see how ancient mythology may have influenced the myths of today. This is the end of my presentation. I hope you have enjoyed. Thank you.